Jordan Riley Swan, author of multiple books that you probably haven't read but should be. And this is the Story Garden lead editor, Diane Callahan. You may also know her from the YouTube channel, educational channel called The Quotidian Writer. We're going to do some questions today about the editing process, exactly what all was involved, how she got into it, and things of that nature. Diane, do you have any things you'd like to kick off with before I start grilling you for questions?
Well, I guess that I focus on developmentally editing fiction. So, meaning that I focus on plot and character. So that's kind of the type of editor that I am primarily, is for the story structure and all those big picture elements. So I don't necessarily do copy editing as in like I fix grammar and typos, but that's not my primary function with Story Garden. So
Okay. What, first off, why are you so mean?
well, for one, I'm mean to you because I like you. So
Oh,
I feel like it's definitely like when I'm comfortable with somebody, I'm definitely mean to them. So I feel like that shows a level of closeness, right? Like I can
yeah.
be, I don't have to, I don't have to be professional or nice around Jordan. So that's fun. And also
Oh,
being mean is being part of being honest, and that's how you learn
that
through.
is how I learned by seeing all the red marks on the paper to
Mhm.
the point where I thought I was drowning in a barrel of ink. All
Yeah.
right. So, when did you decide to become an editor?
I think I've always been interested in becoming an editor, although I sort of started out, being an avid reader, and then I wanted to be a writer from reading a lot. I'm like, oh, I want to write this kind of stuff. And then so as I was learning to write and things like that, that got me into teaching how to write, which is basically what editing is.
Hmm.
And so I feel like I became an editor as a result of wanting to learn to write. And then that got me into I wanted to be in a career where I could just work with stories all the time.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's
So it's not a natural extension of wanting to correct everybody all the time.
I think that's true though, actually. I think there is like a perfectionist micromanager side to every editor. And I think yeah, but it's because I'm always right. So, that's
That's
why.
why. Oh man, it's a good thing we're filming this in widescreen so everybody can see how big your ego is. Oh, what's your favorite thing about working with me?
About working with you
With
specifically.
me, with
Okay, okay,
working
okay.
with me. No, wait, I see it actually says with writers. What's your favorite thing about working with writers, I guess?
Writers. Let's see. I do enjoy yelling at you. That's true. So that's of my favorite things of working, but I can't do that with other clients. I'm nicer to them. It's true. Um, I think
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to interrupt. What they say never to do with when you're in the middle of the interview, but I'm going to interrupt. Uh, just because she's incredibly mean and horrible to me does not mean she's going to be horrible to other clients who would be so kind as to look her up for her services. Don't let this the shark in the water right now keep you from swimming. All right.
I
So
know,
what's
but
back to
some clients really like that. They want the harshest possible feedback, and I don't see myself as harsh. I see myself as constructive, because I think I'd rather be the one who gives the cold, honest truth to clients rather than their readers doing that after the fact, and then. And especially you would cry as you read the reviews when I was like, "Oh, I told you when we were editing that." No, but I think I definitely it's really fun to work with different writers and different genres, because everybody has such a different perspective and like a different well of knowledge than I do. So it's really interesting to read their work, and I feel like I kind of have a glimpse into another person's mind and their life, and just through the way that they write. And I always learn something new every day from editing, and I absolutely love that about it. So
Plus, you get to look into their creative process and how they tackle things, which is
mhm,
should help you later on for your own writing, I would think.
it does.
And speaking of cold, we actually have Diane and I have a joke from the very, very first time we zoomed together to or Skyped, I think, as back then, to plot out my book that I still haven't written. He was it's like a Diane's like an ice cream sandwich with her delivery of compliment, cold hard truth, and then a little warm compliment at the end. So
Mhm.
even when you get which is what I appreciate the most is there's a little bit of okay, this is good and I see what you're doing here and this is nice. but you're absolutely wrong and you should never do it again. But I'm glad you participated in trying. Okay, all right. So next question. All right. How did you get stuck with me? Which is to say, how do you choose your clients?
And I got stuck with you specifically because you messaged me on Twitter after you enjoyed my channel and everything like that, and you wanted to work together. And I was like, all right, I'll work with this girl, because I thought you were a girl, because of Jordan, and you didn't have a profile picture. So I just assumed, which is what we should never do with names or anything like that. Well, I think it's also because you were writing a romance novel, so that made me assume that as well. So, So I have a lot of my clients reach me through my YouTube channel, and so they end up writing all sorts of different genres. And really, my selection of clients, I'm not very selective with clients. I will take pretty much anyone on if I know I can help them, but it's more a matter of my schedule. So if I don't have space in my schedule because I need to have, work-life balance, and I also like to take on probably fewer clients than I think most editors, because I'd like to really focus on that one project. And like, I think if at any point, if I feel myself forgetting something about that client, that means I have too many clients. Like, I want to get to the point where like, oh, so-and-so who does this, that, and the other, and I like perfectly remember what their book is about. Like, I want to have that personalization enough so that I don't have too many people where I'm like, oh, which Andrew am I working with? Because a lot of people have similar names, but so it's not, if I say no to a project, it's either because I don't feel I'm the right editor for it, or I don't have room in my schedule. Like if somebody's writing military sci-fi or something that has a lot of really technical knowledge required, I might refer them to another developmental editor where they're going to get more bang for their buck, because they'll have all that experience and be able to put that in there. So
are there any other genres or types that are a hard no for you?
I think I'm really up for anything. And I get a lot of people, because of my literary versus genre video, I get a lot of people who do blending. Like they'll be like, oh, well, it's a genre novel, but it has literary elements, or, vice versa. And I really love that. So I think I'll pretty much work with anything. And yeah, so I don't think it's only if I don't feel like I have the skill to edit it, that would be the only time. So I don't think I've had any other situations except for like the techno thriller thing. I'm like, yeah, I can help you with characters, I can help you plot and like language if you really want to work with me. But I feel like if you want to have somebody that's also going to fact check you, then I think it's important to have a developmental editor that specializes in that. So
what kind of you mentioned at the very, very beginning the types of editing you do, but do you have a breakdown on your website or something that would give an indication of what specific levels of edit a person will get?
Yeah, and I used to have, I think, more delineation on my website, but right now I'm focusing mostly on developmental, which is that big picture. It's basically like the feedback about, okay, the pacing's kind of slow here, or I can tell you're trying to make this character sympathetic, but it's not really working. And so I focus mainly on that as a developmental editor, and I also do line edits. And so line edits are basically style. So that's like, how can you make the prose tighter and more vivid, and like where can you really bring out your narrative voice? And so I focus on that. And I used to do more copy editing. I've kind of moved away from that because copy editing is similar to line editing. Sometimes they're synonymous, but different editors will define them differently, honestly. But
as we
have learned, yes. But like copy editors, they specifically focus on grammar and typos and just having just the correctness. Like, are you using this word correctly in the text? So copy editor is like the stage that you take when you're all developmentally prepared. And so you'll do that copy edit to make sure it's the reader has a smooth reading experience. And then so I don't do that as much anymore. I still, if you ask me, I probably offer it. And I also do writing coaching, which is the one-on-one like video sessions, just hashing out ideas and trying to brainstorm different ways the story could go, or like writing an outline kind of thing. It's not all writers do outlines, but I do kind of specialize in outline development. So, which
is actually the one we basically did at the beginning, a write your dang novel, so that to plot it and create characters and what have you. Speaking of line edits, one of the things I will, as much as I hate you, I will compliment you on is your ability to maintain the ethereal author's voice authorial, the damn writer's voice. And you managed to save it when I've had experience with other editors who've absolutely sterilized it or neutralized it in pursuit of perfection of grammar or what have you. How do you measure how much you can take from a draft or give to a draft or without ruining what the author's intent is? Is there a hard fast rule, or is it organic?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to come from a place of empathy, and you have to know yourself really well. Like, I have to know the difference between what's my style as a writer, what's this other person's style as a writer. And I think that comes from reading a lot, where you'll read something, you'll be like, oh, wow, this is an interesting way to do it. That's not how I would write it, but I see why they wrote it that way. And so I think you have to have that kind of distinction in your mind between, well, what is going to strengthen this writer's style? Or like, and I think all writers have sort of, there's some general tendencies you can avoid in amateur writing. You know, like if you're overusing something a lot, like I worked with writers who like they use like exclamation points a lot, and I'm like, oh, you know, it's calling attention to itself. So anytime you overuse something, if it's punctuation or a certain word or a certain sentence structure, that repetition is something you can change up without really affecting the author's voice, right? Like it's less about, it's just you're trying to pinpoint like the mood or just the general style and sort of like mimicking that, or just suggesting ways like, hey, you did this in this previous sentence. Could you do something like that in this sentence? Because that was really cool. Like, I want to see more of that like imagery or more of that humor or something like that. But it can be a hard line to toe sometimes. And I don't expect writers to take every single suggestion I make. I think that's very important too. Is like, you as a writer, you need to know what works for you and what you're trying to do. Because like, I'm not giving you something that's like, this is a rule, this is what you have to do. No, you can disagree, and you can either do it a different way, or you can just be like, no, I'm keeping that because it's important to me, or it says what I want it to say. And I'm totally good with that. Like, I do not expect writers to take every single suggestion. So
okay. In there was a well thought out something that inspired an incredibly important question, but then it went right out my mind.
Sorry.
So I can't remember what I was going to ask, but it was probably about me. So I guess that really isn't important. Okay, so we're going to just go to a quick rapid fire series of questions. All right. Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Favorite genre to read other than the one I'm currently working in?
Well, my favorite genre is fantasy sci-fi. So, but I suppose I do like a certain brand of fantasy sci-fi. Like, so it's true that I don't generally like the dragons and elves and orcs kind of fantasy, which is what I always make fun of you for. But I think I like, I don't know, very much like social commentary kind of fantasy sci-fi, very lyrical stuff. Anything that has a touch of magic. I love literary and contemporary stuff too, though. So I will pretty much read anything if it's well written. So I don't care about.
All right, your favorite book other than mine?
Okay, yeah. Let me see. Wish Hunter is my favorite book. No, I can't use Wish Hunter because it's my own creation. But it's coming out on June 1st.
I was setting up for a joke here,
Oh.
and now that you bring up Wish Hunter, it actually, I'm going to stall the joke. My next joke was going to be ask who your favorite author is, and I think we saw where this was going. But let's discuss Wish Hunter for just a brief. I imagine we're going to do an entire video about Wish Hunter. Earlier in the conversation, you talked about the blending, or not blending, but you talked about, maybe it was the blending of literary and commercial. Sometimes I hear that called upmarket.
Mm-hmm.
So when you plotted out Wish Hunter, because what some of the viewers might not know and some of the readers is, despite the fact Diane's name is not splashed across the cover of this thing, the genesis of the idea and the plot did come from Diane. And how do you think you've managed to make it upmarket, or do you feel it's more commercial?
I definitely feel it's more commercial, just because I have a pretty firm understanding of what upmarket is and isn't. And I think that it usually has a much more literary style. Like, I think that in Wish Hunter, the writing style has been praised a lot, which is in thanks to Hiro and you and all of us editing it together. So I think that's really helped shape the style. And but it isn't a literary style because there's a lot of plot to it, and I think that's what makes it more commercial, because it has a lot of plot twist, it has a lot of action, and even though it's very character driven and there's a lot of like important emotions about like grief and insecurity and things like that, it does have that maybe more character weight than you might normally find in certain types of urban fantasy. But yeah, so I don't see it as upmarket just because of the style and just because there's so much plot in it.
Well, speaking of Witch Hunter, still the so how is it editing something that you've created that was the genesis came from you? I mean, it's like here's your baby coming back to you and you have to teach it to walk and talk. How do you process that and edit something and not get too attached? Because one of the hardest things for me is to omit needless words, and what is the quote, kill your darlings.
Mhm.
I don't have the bullets in my gun to kill my darlings. That's what I rely on you to do. How do you manage to do that when you know, okay, I love this moment, but honestly it is dragging down the plot?
I mean, I think after you produce so much, you become less precious about it. Because I've written other outlines and had other books produced, specifically with Hero. So we've done stuff together. Although Witch Hunter is the first I've really done from just starting with my own idea and world. But I think that when I think of it as like a product for a reader, it's not something that's part of me, because I have other things, I have other projects that are more part of me, right? I think that makes it easier because it's like, well, it's there's always, I can put this moment in some other book or some future project. And so for me, I don't have this feeling like this is it, this is my one chance, this is the only time I'll ever get to do that. I'm like, no, I'll have like 100 other things I'm gonna work on. So I think that really helps me be less precious about it, because I have this huge quantity of work. And then I also I've heard the phrase like, you write for yourself and you edit for the reader, and that's definitely helped me too. And getting the outside perspectives, like your perspective on Witch Hunter was so valuable, because I was having trouble being objective, right? I was still
Hmm.
cutting stuff, I was still shaping stuff, but I was like, oh my gosh, I totally love this. I love how she adapted the outline, and it's so good. And then you came in and you were like, oh my god, this scene is like way too long, and like, I'm not feeling the characters here. And I was like, oh, like he hates.
Sweet, sweet revenge
I
for
know.
all the.
It was so good, because when you said that, I was like, oh, I see that. I see this from the reader's perspective, and that really helps me get that objectivity, is when I get that feedback, and then I know what to do with it as an editor, because I'm basically creating a product for the reader. I'm creating an experience for the reader. So yeah, I think definitely it's helped me be less precious about it, just because I know it's not about me. It's about the reader. It's about you. It's about Hero. It's all of us working together in tandem. And so you got to be a less not like self-absorbed. I guess it's just, you don't connect it to yourself so much. Like it's not this part of it is a piece of your soul, but it's not your identity as a person.
Right.
You have to change it. So
So what, as an editor, I know we're going to have some viewers who are definitely looking for writing advice. So one of the questions I would ask, if I wasn't already beat down and emotionally stripped apart by you on a every other Thursday, um, is how can a writer handle those punches of where from the editor where they're like, this isn't working, this is, how do you view that as a writer and not take it negatively and just have it plant in you? As you know, I had an editor we both love vivisect one of my manuscripts, and I'm still recovering. I'll eventually get back to it, but it was the cold, hard, brutal truth, and it put me back on my heels. How can a writer keep that from happening to them and losing so much headway when it does?
yeah, I think that is such a struggle. And I think part of it's time, right? Like you need time to sort of digest it. Like whenever I get feedback, my first reaction is to be defensive, which is why I much prefer to get written feedback as opposed to verbal feedback. Because when people are verbally like, oh, here's this, immediately I'll be like, like I'll get this defensive reaction. So it's easier when it's written. So I'll read it, I'll read all the feedback really fast, and then I'll be like, I'll feel sorry for myself, have a little pity party. And then once I'm ready, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go revise. And then I can kind of look at it like, oh, this is my homework or my assignment. It's not, a personal attack. It's just this, I need to sort through this, and just, I treat it as sort of work. So I think for me, I think you got to let yourself be sad about it. You got to let yourself kind of feel hurt about it. And then you got to sort of step back and think of it objectively of like, okay, well, what am I ultimately trying to create? And is this feedback going to help me create that thing that I really want to see out in the world? Like, I really want this to be something that's good and enjoyable, because yeah, it's really hard to take feedback. But I think just giving yourself some time and really knowing how to sort through the feedback of like, yes, I agree with this, no, I don't agree with this, and here's why. Like, I can articulate what I'm trying to do with this. But I think that makes it easier. And I mean, and just also knowing that not everybody is going to like what you write, and that's fine too. And you're just trying to look for your ideal reader.
So I think that's a good place to end it. Look, find your ideal reader.
Yeah.
And do you have anything you would like to add as we button out of here?
I'm trying to think. Well, you should go buy Jordan's books. The Heart Spitting is a gentle romance, and then Limelight and Larceny is the comedy mystery kind of angle, and then Wish Hunter is our urban fantasy coming out on June 1st. Because I gotta do like one marketing plug. That's
Well, you can also find Diane and get her services at thequotidianwriter.com. She's going to put the links because she's in charge of her little YouTube channel here. She'll put links down below. And that is that's, oh, I see. Wait, in the background, is that Limelight and Larceny there?
it is. I keep
Look
it.
at that.
Look, you have a tree full of it, so I don't think mine's not as impressive.
I can only afford to get you one copy. I mean, that's all you really deserve. All right. Well, we'll see you on the next YouTube experience.